അവിടുന്ന് മണ്ണിറ മണത്തിൽ എന്നോട് മാനസികമായിട്ടുള്ള
Hey everyone, it's Sam, and welcome back to the 911 Nonsense podcast. To stay in the loop, learn about upcoming guests, and join in the conversations with the Noon community, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And hey, if you like what you hear in this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support means the world to us. On this episode of Noon, Will, a flight paramedic with over 15 years of experience, shares stories from rural rescue to whitewater chaos, airport emergencies to gang violence, each shaped by grit, humility, and resilience. From drowning calls that changed his path to launching his own podcast and becoming a flight paramedic, Will brings sharp insight and hard-earned wisdom to the mic. You'll laugh, you'll learn, and you might hold your breath a few times. Let's get started. Hey, Will, thank you so much for joining us on the Noon podcast. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to come and join me. Can I go ahead and get a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure. My name is Will Barry. I am a flight paramedic in North Carolina. Been in EMS for about 15 years now. Worked a lot of my 911 experience in Colorado, and yeah, moved to North Carolina. And I'm also co-host of the Loud and Clear podcast.
That's awesome. And you've been doing medicine for quite some time, right? Because you're flying in a rotor capacity, is that correct?
Yep. Currently, I am in a rotor wing flight capacity.
That's awesome. And what kind of experience did you need before you felt comfortable getting into this flight position?
I would say busy 911 experience has paid dividends for me. There's so many things you learn when you're working the streets in an environment where you're going call to call sometimes and you're experiencing a lot of diversity of call. I think that experience, you develop the ability to manage chaotic situations. You develop the ability to talk to a lot of different people, to pivot, to um, think on your feet. And so when you're in a flight capacity and you're usually responding into some EMS agency's worst call of the month or the year. I also worked in a 911 system that was in a city, so we never called a helicopter because we were just always close drive to a trauma center, so we managed all of the sick patients. And I think I came to that system from a rural one where anytime something big happened, we were calling a flight crew. And so, having worked in that busy urban environment where we took care of all the sick patients, we went call to call, you were making all of the patient care decisions yourself, that set me up really, really well to fly. And I don't know any different, but that I would say that experience has been crucial to any success I've had flying.
That's awesome. And is there any other experience that you wish that you would have gotten or that you suggest that people get before they start considering a flight position?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say it's crucial, but if you get any sort of in-hospital clinical experience, that's helpful too. So I briefly, for about 2 years, the system I was working in was very rural. And so when we weren't running calls on the ambulance, we were working in the emergency department as a tech. And so it was very small, very rural, but that ED tech experience, I think, paid dividends to going to, even though it was a long time before I flew, I still knew like some ED process and lab process and, working with radiology and imaging a little bit and just some of the rules that in clinical environment is beholden to that you need to be able to play by when you do like a sick interfacility call. I think that helped me. And then honestly, some of the experience that helped me most, not just with flight, but EMS in general, is I was a whitewater rafting guide for 7 years, and that experience has paid dividends time and time again. And I mean, I could talk ad nauseum about that, but in essence, you are meeting a crew of people, 4 to 6 people that you've never met before. You're going to train them up quickly. You're going to take them down the river, and you're going to be expected to provide a safe and fun trip. And so you're taking complete strangers, you're making them work towards a common mission and goal, and you're trying to keep them safe. And then there is an element of always being able to pivot, like you can't control the river, you have to flow with it. And so, yeah, you may have a plan A, and then all of a sudden you're on plan B and then C or EF. And so I think that ability to improvise, think on my feet, roll with the punches, train up a small crew. I mean, that I lean on that experience heavily all the time in EMS.
I could see why that would be important, or how even that could help control the situation when you're in an airplane or in a rotor. Like, what got you into whitewater rafting, and did you ever have any um unplanned bad, you know, outcomes?
Yeah, so I got into whitewater rafting because I just honestly thought it'd be really fun. And I was
You're
going to college.
crazy. I don't think that that's fun by any means, but that's just me.
Well, give it a shot. You never know.
Nope, no, thank you.
Uh, yeah, I was going to college in North Carolina, and I had worked construction before college, and I just didn't want to go back and do that for a summer job. I just wanted to do something different. So I got a job in Colorado, in central Colorado, in the Arkansas River Valley as a whitewater rafting guide there. And I fell in love with it. That was actually where I first got exposed to emergency medicine because I had to have a first aid certification and then kind of emergency response in general because we had to do swiftwater rescue training and you're responding to it's not quite the same, but when you're plucking a swimmer out of a river, like it's pretty legit. Like you got to be dialed in, just like you would with other emergency response type things. And so that was kind of when I thought, oh, maybe this type of work would be something that would suit me. But yeah, so initially I had just a 5-day wilderness advanced first aid certification, and that was my initial introduction into any sort of emergency medicine, and kind of fell in love with it. And then when that certification expired at the end of 2 years, I did a wilderness EMT class and I loved it and was gonna I got involved with instructing that and then that is what led me to work as an EMT and I was kind of through experiences I had on the ambulance, ran my first cardiac arrest and felt like okay, this I was able to think clearly in this and I kind of you kind of like it, you kind of like the response element. I was kind of contemplating paramedic school, and then I was guiding on the Arkansas River, and there was a group of boats going down the river is called a pod, and so I was the trip leader for the pod, which means like you're running the whole trip, so to speak. And yeah, there was a flip within our pod, so a boat flipped over. This was high water. And then there was one of the folks that came out of the boat swam to my boat, and then through like a series of really unfortunate events, he ended up drowning like while we were trying to get him out of the water. So we ended up um, ultimately getting him out downstream a little bit. Started to work him. He was in cardiac arrest. Started to work him, rendezvoused with search and rescue and with local EMS, and worked him some more, and then ultimately did a pronouncement. And that experience was really sentinel for me because it was incredibly traumatizing. That was like well, it was probably one of the first real traumatic events I had experienced and had lasting impact, but also set me in motion to become a paramedic and do this work because it felt like though this had a really negative impact on me, it also showed me that I could excel in these environments. And so I've always kind of held that intention, you know, we experience these worst days all the time, and but yet we're trying to bring some sort of calm to them and the price that that takes on us, but there's also satisfaction involved, and so there's this constant weighing of outcome in that.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you described it as a sentinel event for you, because when you say sentinel to me, that's saying that like that's a very stopping moment for you,
Oh
but
yeah.
you're almost describing it as a pivotal moment, right? Because that could have been taken one of two ways. That could have been like, this person died. I don't want to have any part of this. I want nothing to do with EMS. I don't want anything to do with, with the risk of anybody dying ever again. Or you turn it around like you did and you're like, okay, well, I can change this and I can make potentially a difference with somebody. And I think it's really cool that you shared that story. And I'm really sorry that you had that experience, but also, like, I'm super proud of you that you were able to turn that around and say, you know what? This could have gone differently, but you also, I can tell, realistically know that there's a chance that even if you had had your EMT at that time, that doesn't necessarily mean that it would have changed the outcome, right? And I think that we're seeing in EMT schools and paramedic schools and this kind of change of mentation where we're going from this is an emergency, we're here to save lives, changing to the mindset of, well, you're not going to save everybody, right? That like changing the realism, right? We need to be realistic with our EMTs and with our paramedics and nurses and doctors that you're not going to save everybody. There's a really good chance a large number of these people that we are trying to save are not going to be saved, especially in these emergent
Mm.
situations, right? So
Yeah.
it's a really neat outtake that you have on that very specific circumstance. And you had been, this was as you were starting as an EMT, or this was right before EMT?
Yeah, so I was an EMT at the time and I had been working PRN on an ambulance. So I had
Okay.
gotten to see like it's okay, it's not like the show ER. The save
Yeah.
rate isn't 98%, you know. Um, and so I wasn't naive to that, but I think you still feel like okay, we're this is gonna have a good outcome, you know. And I glossed over some things, you know, but some things that were I struggled a lot. I was the highest ranking medical provide the person with the most training on that scene, you know, and so I carried this was above and beyond, but I carried like a BVM and some OPAs with me, and so like as an EMT in the wilderness, I was able to do pretty much everything possible, which isn't really a lot, like you know. But I remember feeling like that still wasn't enough, and the what if that was a you know my
Mm-hmm.
first real exposure to like the how how toxic just like the question what if can be for you and what honestly saved me is I had like a mentor that was a raft guide with me that was a paramedic at the time in a busy fire-based system and he was on shift and then the incident happened and he drove up from his job. He like basically called out sick, drove up from his job. He just heard that there had been a fatality and he knew that I was there and he knew that I was an EMT. So he kind of pulled me aside and was like, "What happened?" You know? And then he found out um that like I had played a bigger role in it. Like I wasn't just there, but like I had been trying to pull him out of the water and then like we had to do the resuscitation and all this. And I don't know, I just felt very cared for by him and that meant a lot to me because there were a lot of nonverbal things communicated. Like I just knew like okay, he's seen it all, done it all, and he's like you know, not really asking me like, well, did you think of this or did you think of that? He was just like, oh man, I'm so sorry, you know, and he and I, one of the most impactful things from that whole situation is I went out on the river with him the next day and we retraced the entire incident with him and one other person, just the three of us. and I went through like every single detail with him. And at the end, he was like, I don't know, man. I wouldn't have done anything differently. I think you did every possible thing you could. And that having that was incredibly powerful to me, and I think still is. And I think that I've remembered that really vividly when I've interacted with EMTs and paramedics that have just done something for the first time or felt like they had a call go sideways, or they're kicking themselves for a decision they made. Um, those memories that are formed in an during a time like that or immediately after, are they it's like wet cement,
Yeah.
you write in it, and then it's there forever, and you just have to be a good steward of that. That doesn't mean you always have to tell people they did it right, but I think we have to remember that each we're all humans, and we're all actually struggling, even though we pretend like we're not.
Always, huh? That's really cool that that person was able to do that for you and that then that you were in turn able to turn that around and use it in your own practices moving forward as an EMT and a paramedic and now a critical care paramedic. That's really neat because you don't see that a lot anymore, right? We don't, I feel like with as busy as the systems are becoming, we're not seeing a lot of genuine, like one-on-one contact, and it's hard to get that. So, from my experience, we're getting these crazy calls and we're seeing these crazy things, and we're not getting a lot of time to stop and think about it and process it correctly. We're waiting until the end of the shift and then going home and doing what a lot of people do, which is go straight to drinking or however else they decompress, and they're not actually processing that moment, right? Or that time. And it's hard because how do you justify taking another ambulance out of the system for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the rub, as old as EMS itself, right?
Yeah.
Is your crew needs a break, but your system can't handle it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. We have right now one of our local systems in the state is they're pulling out the ambulance contract. So they're going to a fire only EMS based system. And I'm curious to see how that's going to go when they, I mean, clearly at the time of the ambulance contract dismissal, there's not enough fire response. So how are they gonna make that up? How are they gonna fix that gap that there so clearly is, right? It's interesting. EMS is in a very, very interesting state right now. And I think what happens in the next few years, or at least in the next decade, will kind of determine where EMS goes in the future, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I agree.
So you've had actually a really like a lot of really neat, unique jobs. One of them being that you worked at the airport as an EMT in Denver, correct?
Yeah, I was a paramedic at the Denver International Airport, which was like super cool.
That is super cool. Conspiracy theory wise, are there tunnels underneath the airport?
There are tunnels.
Oh no.
Yeah, they are not the global domination bunker that everybody thinks they are. So our badges got us into literally everywhere in the airport. So and you were expected to get to know the facility inside and out because you could go to calls literally anywhere. And so I personally explored DIA pretty significantly, and there are no lizard people. Take my word for it.
Oh no, there's no lizard people. That makes me a little upset. Do you watch a lot of YouTube or not really?
I mean, yeah, but I don't. It's so big, right? Like what?
It's so
Yeah.
big.
What are you drawn towards?
I watch a guy who hosts a show called The Y-Files. Have you heard of him?
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Oh, he's amazing. I love him. He basically talks a lot about conspiracy theories and then he debunks them,
Uh-huh.
which is also really cool because seeing the ones because he does a lot of research and getting to see the ones where he can't necessarily debunk is really neat too, right? It leaves a lot of like open air for that kind of stuff. But the lizard people in the Denver airport's one of the major ones.
Well, it's funny, I had more than one occasion because you're in uniform, so you look like somebody that works there. And someone would pull you aside and say like, "Hey, what's with all the conspiracy theory stuff? Aren't there like murals on the wall?" And this one guy's like, "Oh yeah, if you like go down there, take a right, you'll see the mural that everybody's talking about." He's like, "Oh, cool." And he was like, "So is it true?" And I was like, "No, like take it from me, I get to go everywhere in this place. It's not true." And he looked at me and he goes, "Nah," and like waved his hand. So
He's not gonna believe you.
people are gonna believe what they want to believe, you know?
I'm brain farting what his name is, the host of Y Files. He does a very well and thorough researched topic usually when he talks
Mm.
about him. So it's interesting. I really enjoy it. What were some of the things that you got to do while you were working at the airport?
Yeah, that was a incredibly unique and just an awesome EMS experience that is it's a one-off. I mean, you're not gonna have EMS like that anywhere else. So if anybody's unfamiliar, in the early 90s, the city of Denver built a brand new airport, and the airport was in the middle of the city, and they basically just ran out of room to grow. And they had the forethought to think like, well, if we had this massive airport, we're going to turn the city of Denver into like a big hub for business and all commerce, all kinds of stuff. So they annexed 53 square miles. Way out at the time, it was like grassland in the middle of nowhere, and they moved the airport out there. So it's 53 square miles, which is actually more like space than the city limits of San Francisco, which is pretty wild.
That is wild.
Um, yeah, and so it's a city within a city. But it's got very unique challenges. So there's airport medics. So the airport has like a par level of how many medics there needs to be. Usually, multiple medics in the main terminal, and then medics on each concourse, and then ambulances rotate through from the city system. And so when a call drops in the airport, an airport medic goes and they have security clearance to get anywhere in the airport. And then they determine if a ambulance is needed or not. Now, sometimes you automatically dispatch the ambulance like in addition to the airport medic, like cardiac arrest, CPR in progress, or if a plane diverted for medical reasons. So that means that, they leave their intended flight plan because of a medical emergency, then an ambulance would also meet them at their gate. Um, but yeah, airport medics there, you have like a surface vehicle, right? So like a Tahoe or a Suburban, it's like a quick response vehicle. And then you also have a means to respond to calls on the concourse. So a golf cart or a Segway, which is like super random and wild to like go to EMS calls on a Segway. Um, but yeah, you like the bread and butter call out there is what we would call an incoming medical, which means there's an airplane in the air, something happened, they're not deviating from their flight plan like they were supposed to land in Denver, and they just want emergency personnel to meet them at the gate when they arrive. And so we would run those calls all the time. And you have to imagine it's not like a normal 911 call because a lot of times it's stuff that no one would probably call 911 for, but like the flight crew has to tell someone.
Hmm.
And like sometimes the patient doesn't even want help. They're like, "Oh, I just passed out," or whatever it was. And you're like, "Well, hold on, we need to assess you and just make sure, like, help us help you. Like, we'll get you on your way, but let's just make sure nothing bigger is happening." Um, and then you would see just like random stuff. So we had multiple stories of like intercepting drug mules that had like, baggies of
What?
whatever explode in them. And like, you're running these like basically dead cocaine overdoses or heroin overdoses.
You're kidding me? That is nuts,
Yeah,
dude.
and then like there's a highway that feeds the airport, so car wrecks. There would be like random suicides out at the airport. We had a lot of like psych patients that would wind up out at the airport. And then, but there's all these other challenges. Sometimes you would, let's say you meet an international flight coming in, and they have to go through customs. Like you can't just pluck them there, they have to go through customs before they can go to the hospital technically. So they would like send someone down to do like a super fast screening on them because they knew like they were going to the hospital. Um, so yeah, it's just really unique. You're also always, I would tell our medics out there, because I worked out there as a supervisor for a few years, and I would always tell them, hey, this is fun, it's unique, it's a change of pace. Like you're not in the city going call to call to call on an ambulance. However, always remember the potential for utter catastrophe is right there. So we would train and prep for aviation disasters, and work with the airport to be ready for like a crash. And so you have to be just at the ready for anything. We would get like bus rollovers out there and
It literally is like
other.
a city within a city. That is
Yeah.
insane, dude. Just curious, when you're teaching people to prep right, this is just a random thought I had. Now, as a flight paramedic, I can kind of think this way, but for flight physiology, right, this affects people. When you're flying, we get a lot of PEs from people who are on long flights because you are getting a lot of compression on your legs and then you're not moving your legs a whole lot. So
Hmm.
the potential to develop DVTs, amongst other things, right? PEs and cardiac arrest or chest pain, so angina, like that kind of stuff. Is that something that you guys would teach in preparation? Like if you have somebody who's coming in complaining of shortness of breath or chest pain or like your stereotypical stuff, headache for potential stroke, like is that something that you guys trained for when you were training people or being as a supervisor in that role?
Yeah, I think we would make sure before people could work out there, they had worked in the system for a while. And part of it is you just need to make sure that they're like um, decision making around refusals is really solid,
Sure.
because most of the time when you encounter, so like that incoming medical situation, a lot of times those people, they don't want, they're on a trip. Like they want to get to wherever they're going. And so you have to be really good at navigating that. Um, sometimes it's like this is complete baloney, like a flight attendant with no medical knowledge like spun this up. And so, okay, we need to do our due diligence, but like this person is fine to refuse. And then sometimes they're like, no, I'm going to wherever for this very important reason, and you're not going to stop me. And then you have to be very good at educating them. Like, actually, you could be having a significant blood clot, and here's what I'm seeing with my limited tools that points me towards that. And if you don't come with me, that could be fatal for you. And we would be that explicit with them. And if they didn't want to go, well, you're allowed to make a bad decision, but it's our job to inform you of how bad that decision is.
Yeah. Especially going into Denver too, right? Where you have like an extensively higher elevation than you do in most other places. So you get a lot of hypoxic patients that weren't really acclimated to that elevation when they were coming in from wherever they flew in from.
Well, and one flight physiology thing we would talk about frequently is when they pressurize the cabin of a commercial airliner, it's like being on a roughly like an 8,000 foot peak.
Hmm.
So you could leave Tampa, Florida, and yeah, you're in an airplane, but it's basically like you went up to 8,000 feet. And so that has an effect on people, especially once they have a bunch of comorbidities or they drink a bunch of alcohol or maybe they take a Xanax because they're scared of flying, like
Yeah.
you can't you can't write all that off.
No, that's so crazy. Can you tell me like one of your probably favorite stories in EMS altogether? Because you, like I said, you've had a lot of unique experiences, so I'm sure you have a favorite.
Yeah, some airport stories come to mind because we were just talking about the airport, but I had I was doing a ride along for one of the emergency medicine doctors from like our base hospital that we would do that frequently. Like they would come do a ride along with us just to see how EMS worked out at the airport. And and so she was riding with me and we got called. The call dropped like really close. I was showing her all around the airport, so we are out on the airfield, and when the call dropped, we were really close, so we zipped over there. And it was for like someone not acting right on a plane. And so we got there and it was a 737 and we walk on the jet bridge, and as we walk on the jet bridge, people are like getting out of your way like, oh, thank God. And like anytime the Red Sea is just like automatically parting, you're like, ooh, something is weird up ahead. And so we walk on the plane and the flight attendant made eye contact with me and she was sweating and her eyes were real big and she looked at me like I don't even know what to say. And so I look past her and there was a guy and he had already put on his like the PFD, the flotation device that's stored under your seat. He had it on and he looked up at me and the look in his eyes was like it would be like if you caught like a raccoon in like a cardboard box, you know? And I was like, what is happening? And so the flight attendant looked at me and she was like, I don't know why he did this. We started to taxi back from the gate and he just pulled that on and then he started trying to open his window, which they don't open. And so
No.
people kind of freaked out. They taxied back to the gate and then here we are. So he's sweaty and he's scared and he's got his PFD on. And I just got down really close and whispered in his ear, like something in me, I was like, there's a psych component to this. Something is not right. And so I just whispered in his ear. Our common tactic was like, just get the person off the plane and get out of that fishbowl situation. So I just whispered in his ear, like, hey, sir, what do you say we go out into the off the plane and just talk about what happened? And he shook his head yes. And so we walk out. He takes the PFD off. We give it back to the flight crew.
That's nice of
Um,
you.
and we sit down in the boarding area. And, you know, anytime I asked him what happened, and he was kind of like evasive, wasn't really answering questions. And so anytime it's not making sense, or I think there's a psych component, I just have the person start telling me like the story of their day. I don't know. I just feel like it starts to unlock some stuff. So I was like, okay, where were you going? Where did you come from? How did you get there? And through all of this, come to find out, he has schizophrenia. He missed his meds because he's trying to fly he's trying to get somewhere to be with family. And so he's like never flown before. He's a brittle schizophrenic guy, misses his meds because like this whole travel experience is like chaotic for him. And then I like kind of got close and softly and like in his, you have to be careful with these folks, but you could tell this guy was like scared and pretty harmless. And I was like, when you put your PFD on, or when you put that floaty on, was like was something telling you to do that? And he shook his head yes. And I was like, is it something that I wouldn't see or hear? And he shook his head yes. And I was like, why don't we get you somewhere where you'll be safe and they can help you? And he just started crying.
No.
And yeah, so he ended up getting transported to the hospital. And I don't know. I mean, you're not really left with much else to do in that situation, but get that patient to the hospital. But at least he was like, yes, please, thank you. Like this, like
Yeah, at least he was
you could
willing
just
to
tell.
go.
Yeah, like the internal stimuli were just like going nuts for that guy.
I mean, that's a lot. Airports and then getting on a giant airplane with a bunch of people you don't know, that is very overstimulating. That can be quite a lot.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
In your whole career, what would you say has been your most impactful situation or story?
So positively impactful. I worked with our medics at the airport a lot on our um, like how we would respond to a big like aviation incident. And then one day while we were working middle of the day, a flight bound for Hawaii, Boeing 777 returned to the airport with an engine fire. Their engine had exploded after takeoff. Um,
Mm.
and so the they had a full ARF, like airport rescue and firefighting response to suppress the fire. And we were very fortunate in that no one was hurt. We had no patients, but it felt I always look back at that experience because there were a lot of things about that experience where training paid off. And I felt like our small team really came together and did an awesome job. And the things that we had practiced and trained, um, they were working, you know? And I felt like it ultimately was kind of a drill, you know, thankfully, you know, that we didn't have any patients, but it was just really satisfying to like practice something and train for something, especially that high profile, and then feel like it was successful. Um, and was it perfect? No, but it still felt like a win. I always really think a lot. I have a picture from that day actually framed in my house, which means a lot to me.
That's really cool that you're able to take that experience and utilize it. It's also a learning experience, right? Like you said, it might not have been perfect, but it got you closer to perfect for the next time that you and your team were going to respond to something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think like if you think about running a cardiac arrest, like if you just wait long enough, like you're gonna run one. But like a big Boeing 777 with a fire on board, like those are pretty rare. And so to do a lot of like planning, training, thinking, and then get to put a little bit of that in play, that was a rewarding experience for me. But I think negative wise, like the most impactful experience, I was working on the ambulance 911 in Denver, and there was a biker um, rally happening at a like a big convention center in the city. And so, you know, all this motorcycle stuff happening, and two biker gangs started fighting with each other. And then some people started stabbing each other, and then some people started shooting. And so a couple people get shot. There's a few people stabbed, and then a bunch of people just like hit with fists and stuff. And it was really chaotic because when the gunshots happened, this whole convention center like cleared out. And then these biker gang folks don't really want to draw attention to themselves. So, like, people were exiting bloody, but they're not wanting help. And so it was like a really, meanwhile, the cops are pushing through trying to clear this huge building because they just get reports of shots fired in the building. And at first, of course, it comes out as active shooter, but it's
Hmm.
kind of not. It's kind of isolated to like a fight between a few people, you know? Um, so my partner and I were not the first arriving ambulance, but we were responding like second or third into this call, and we had the ability to listen to the police channel. And the police then came on their channel, and they just very like they were uber professional all the time, but you could hear it in their voice like this was not good. And they just said, we need an ambulance to the north side. We need an ambulance to the north side. And we figured an officer had been shot. So we keyed up with everybody and we're like, we're going to the north side. So we go up there, and we go drive through this crowd. Our ambulances were such that you could like crawl from the front cab into the back, you know?
Hmm.
So while we were waiting through this sea of people, I did that and started like setting up like lines and we just knew we were getting a gunshot wound. Um, well, when the back doors, the ambulance stopped, and my partner just yelled, "Will, get ready." And then the back doors of the ambulance opened violently, and it was like complete chaos. So I remember there was a cop that jumped up on our back bumper with an AR, and he was like holding it barrel pointed in the air, but the look on his face was like we're about to go to like shots are gonna ring out any second. The stretcher got pulled out of the ambulance, like just ripped out. And then there was like a scrum on the ground to try to get this guy on the ambulance. And like all the cops had their guns drawn, like some of the biker dudes had weapons. And then while this is happening, this big dude from the Mongols biker gang gets in the back of the ambulance and he says, um, hey, are you the medic that's going to be working on this guy? And I was like, yeah. And he said, that's my buddy. I was a medic in the army. He's been shot in the chest. We've been doing CPR for 30 minutes. He needs a chest tube and a pericardial centesis. Can you do that? And I was thinking like, well, no, but I was trying to remain calm because he's like yelling this at me and
Mm-hmm.
there's like a lot of chaos. And I was like, I'll needle decompress his chest, man. I'm gonna take really good care of him. And he goes, he needs a chest tube. Can you fucking do that? And I was like, dude, we're gonna take really good care of your friend. And then he finally just yelled, he's like, look at me, look at me. And so I turned and he was like, man, if I don't see your hands start working faster, and if you don't save my friend's life, I'm gonna pull my gun out and I'm gonna fucking kill you right now. Do you
Jesus.
understand me? And I was like, I just looked at him like in my mind, I was thinking like, this isn't helping, but also you're not gonna provoke him. And so right as he said that, and I mean, picture the right big beard, big strap, big muscular dude, leather vest, no sleeves, no shirt under it, and his buddies started pulling him out of the back of the ambulance and he was putting his finger right in my face and he was like, you hear me, you hear me, you hear me. And then like the stretcher gets loaded in and there's like a dude in cardiac arrest and then a couple cop, it was like the last helicopter out of Saigon, like a couple cops came in, a couple firefighters came in. I don't even know where they came from. They I guess had I don't even know where they came from. And then the back door's shut. My partner, who also had been like yelled at and threatened, got in the front seat and he was like, Will, we're leaving. And I was like, go. And then, so we had a police escort like around us all the way to the hospital. And I remember telling the folks in the back of the ambulance, like, hey guys, like that was really fucked up, but we're leaving. Like, let's go to work, basically. So, started caring for the patient, but also like 30 minutes of CPR after getting dropped from a gunshot wound to the chest. Like any paramedic kind of knows, like this is completely futile, but
Yeah.
we're doing this because we need to get out of here.
Bilateral darts
Um,
and call it. Yeah.
Pretty much. And
Yeah.
so I get an airway, we do a chest decompression, doing IO. And I was doing we had this police escort and the one of the cops in the back of the ambulance, you could tell like they just looked like they had seen a ghost. I mean, it was like they had been rescued because that situation had been so volatile. It was about to turn into gunfight at the OK Corral. Um, and you could hear on the police radio like they were calling out that the bikers had all gotten on their bikes and they were going to the hospital that we were going to. So they sent, Denver has multiple districts in it. They sent an entire, like every available officer from one entire district to the hospital to like protect it. Um, so we're driving there, there are tons of sirens because like our siren, and then there's cop cars all around us. So it's just like a really chaotic transport. Everyone's like freaking out. It was not a smooth, like emergent ride to the hospital. Um, I pulled out like another 10 gauge needle to do another chest decompression, and the way like I was sitting, I think I was like sitting on the bench seat, trying to uncap the needle, and then it was just like boom, and we all got jostled out of our seats, and we had been hit, and
By like a
we didn't know
car?
what had happened. We had been in an accident.
Oh my God.
So, Mark, my partner, just yelled from the front, like, "You guys okay?" We are like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I'm gonna keep going." And we are like, "Okay." Well, what had happened was a cop car had gone ahead of us and blocked cross traffic at a four-way intersection. And then as we blasted through the intersection, he merged too soon and like merged from blocking traffic right into the side
The
of our
cop
ambulance.
hit you?
Yeah.
What?
So we
Oh my
get to the
God.
hospital and give report, and they basically pronounce the guy like immediately based on his story. And I'll be really honest, like I just went in there was a I just left the room and I felt like I had seen a ghost, and this guy that I was buddies with, he could see it in my face and he was like, "Dude, you okay?" And I was like, "No, man. Like that was super fucked up." And I could just see the way he was looking at me that I must have looked not okay, but he didn't really know what to say. He just like patted me on the shoulders, like, "You're cool, dude. You're good." He's like, "You'll be okay." And I was like, "I don't know, man. That was fucked up." And so I went into there's a bathroom in the emergency department that we would all use that was like a staff restroom. I just went in there, locked the door, and started crying. Um, and it was like everything came crashing down from like the person threatening me and, managing the patient, getting in a wreck, like all of it. Like that was just super unsafe and not cool. And no one's fault. Like we thought we were going to help a shot cop. Honestly, that's what we thought was happening, and we don't fault the cops because the cops were in a shitty situation where they what had ended up happening was they pushed through the building while they were clearing it. They found this group of bikers working on their friend, and everybody's armed, and it was kind of like the way to make this whole thing diffuse is just get them an ambulance so they can get their friend out of here. And so like if they had said like we're not giving you an ambulance until you put your guns away, well that wouldn't have like gone well for anyone.
No.
Um so yeah, I kind of like composed myself after a minute, went outside, and thankfully my partner, who's one of my best friends, he was like, "Hey dude, we're not going back in service." And I was like, "Good." Um and it was on a kind of a funny note, when the traffic investigation cop finally got to us like hours later, he was like, "Dude, this whole thing's so fucked up." He was like, "I'm not," he's like, "I'm gonna generate a report," but because it was like two emergency vehicles hit each other driving emergent. One of them's a cop car, one of them's an ambulance. Like he doesn't know who to like. There's no, I don't even
Who's at
know how
fault
he
here?
like, yeah, totally. But I remember that was like a little bit of humor in that.
Sure.
But honestly, that was the start of me realizing that like I wasn't okay from the job. And like I needed to do something about it. And that wasn't, I can't take credit for that. Like my wife gets all the credit for like helping me realize like how jacked up I was.
Sometimes I think we need that external source to tell us, you know. That is, I mean, I wasn't even there and I'm overstimulated from that story.
Oh man.
Is there anything that you would change?
Um, Great question. So I don't know because I think looking at something in hindsight is a bias, right? You have a whole bunch of information that you didn't have in the moment. You're also looking at it with a fully functioning brain because you don't have the adrenaline kicked in, right?
Sure.
So if I were going to train or do something differently, having like a little more information before just being like the Kool-Aid man and blasting through into that situation would have been better. How we got that information, I don't know because it was so chaotic. We had some of our leadership on scene and they weren't able to get accurate information from other first responders. They're trying to figure out how many patients are there? Is this truly an active shooter? Is this truly like the patients were kind of trickling out in onesies and twosies, and none of them were really after like the first. There was like another gunshot wound that left and a stabbing that left, and after they left, it was like dudes that had been like punched, you know? So it was like, well, hold on now, like everyone's freaking out, but like, is this the big one? You know? And the information was tricky and before we flood this utter chaos with all of our resources and make it worse, kind of make it harder to manage, like what's happening? Um, and so I think there were lessons learned there for like, you know, like a command perspective and like a resource management perspective. As far as what my partner and I did, it's really hard because we truly thought we were going to go help a shot cop, which is really, we were willing to risk a lot for that situation. And if we had asked, our only option at that point was to ask over the radio, and that just wasn't the right thing to do in that moment because it was so chaotic. And then sitting back and just basically staging, um, uh, that that's an option too. But like you see this in these situations frequently where if you if you stage at a big call, well, the people that gravitate towards the lights are maybe hurt, but if they're ambulatory, they're probably not the ones that are most hurt. Like the people that are most hurt are the non-ambulatory ones that are like at the center of the bullseye where this call got its craziest, you know? And so if you just stage, like you're going to end up with like, you know, my finger hurts. I was punched in the nose. I tripped. I was running and then I tripped and fell, you know? And so, like, we did kind of feel like if there's a gunshot wound patient, that's the one we need to go get. So, yeah, like knowing what I know now, I, I guess I would prefer not to enter into that situation in the first place. But at the same time, that would mean that I put other first responders at risk, and I'm not cool with that. So I don't know. There's a lot of tension there.
Do you think that your mindset has changed? Like if you were put in the exact same situation right now today, you would still go in, or do you think you'd stand by?
I think if I could do it all over again, I would try to get more information somehow from people that were right there on the scene regarding what are we entering into. Um, you know, you want to say like, well, ask them, is it safe? But here's the thing. It that's we do that a lot in EMS. Like, is it safe? Is it safe? And
Scene
the truth
safety,
is,
right?
it's not safe. Like, it's not safe. It's not gonna be safe. Like that scene wouldn't be safe until they either kill or arrest all of those bikers.
Right.
Which and then in that case, there are more patients and we're here to serve patients. So like it's not binary. It's not safe or unsafe. It's you're assessing risk in real time and trying to decide if you're willing to tolerate it or not. And in that moment, we were willing to tolerate that risk, but the problem was we didn't know what we were walking into. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I guess I'm trying to say I wouldn't do it differently, but surely there's something that we could do differently that would help in that situation. I know the first arriving cops were legitimately concerned for their safety, and so they're not able to like, you know, they're working an active scene where they know people have guns in a big environment. So,
Where like they all have guns. Yeah.
yeah, so you ask if you were to ask them, is it safe? They're gonna roll their eyes and be like, well, no, like, but well, I mean, what do you want them to say? So,
Yeah.
Um,
That sounds just like it sounds like a clusterfuck of a call, dude. I can just imagine how overstimulating it was at the time. And then you have all of these people, and now you're adding the guy who's threatening to shoot you, and on top of a known cardiac arrest that you know is probably going to have a poor outcome because it's been 30 minutes they've been doing CPR on him at this point. Like that's rough. Your partner's not safe, you're not safe. That's a rough situation, and I'm sorry that you had to do that, but I'm glad that you were able to keep yourself safe and that you guys were able to get out of that situation in a safe manner. In my opinion, the cop hit the ambulance. But that was not the investigator cop's decision. So,
oh yeah, I think if that cop were sitting here with us right now, he'd be like, dude, I totally messed up.
yeah, yeah, I agree 100%. Well, Will, it has been so phenomenal. Thank you so much for sharing these stories. I just want to give you 15 minutes to kind of shout anything out, talk about how we can find you, where we can find you, all of the good things.
Yeah. Thanks. It's been awesome chatting with you. Yeah, so that the big story that I told, I guess it's important for me to say like I've worked other places. I've worked in rural North Carolina, I've worked in rural Colorado, and I've interacted with people that have worked all over. And though that story I told is wild, I know plenty of other people that have been threatened on scenes. I know people that have responded to their own family members, so everyone, it doesn't matter the size of your system. It doesn't matter how big of a city or municipality or community you work in. Like EMS providers all over the country are faced with incredibly traumatic events all the time. And I'm actually kind of fortunate because that event makes for an interesting story. Like it made for the news. And then also, there's a cool documentary that's going to be coming out soon called Into the Unknown, A Paramedic's Journey. They filmed some of that documentary in Denver. They followed some phenomenal paramedics for the documentary. Two of them work in Denver that are just awesome human beings and have an incredible story. And you should tune into the documentary to hear their story. I got to tell my story on the documentary, and sure, like it makes for good entertainment, but I've talked to people from other smaller cities and towns that have had equally hairy situations and equally traumatic events happen to them. And so um these are not one-off things. These are risks and experiences that providers are facing every single day. First off, if you're listening to this and you're outside of EMS, I think you should realize that um, our job is not safe, and we're on all the same calls as police and fire, and we're exposed to many of the same risks. And then also the level of uh, post-traumatic stress is incredibly high in our industry. I don't know stats, I just know anecdotes, but it's incredibly high. And so we need to do everything we can to advocate for the welfare of EMS providers in so many different ways, both preventative, like wellness initiatives, and then also care once events have happened. But also, I think it's important for if you're an EMS provider and you're listening to this, like please talk to someone. It might just be a family member, friend, or sometimes family members are hard to talk to because you don't want them to know how much you're struggling. But if there's a trusted partner that you feel close with, like talk to them, share with them. It starts by just telling your story to someone, and I think that can start your journey of health and getting well is just tell your story to somebody, share it, don't keep it inside. Going home after your shift and drinking a bunch is not healthy. It just isn't. And so you need to keep that in check. Um, and then all other wellness strategies matter, like taking time off, getting in places that help your soul feel renewed. Faith-based communities are important, eating right, exercise, all of those things are puzzle pieces to help you weather this industry. So, take good care of yourself and talk to people that you trust and let people in. That would be something that's important to me. Also, check us out. My co-host Ross and I host the Loud and Clear podcast. So Ross is an emergency physician in Southwest Colorado, and I again am a flight paramedic in North Carolina. That may seem like a random duo. We were paramedics together in Colorado for a time. So we were paramedics together, and then Ross went on to medical school, did an emergency medicine residency, and then an EMS fellowship. And then I was kept being a paramedic, and then in leadership, and now flight paramedic. Um, so yeah, we host the Loud and Clear podcast. We try to give high level education. So um, take a topic that you didn't learn in paramedic school, but then you wish you had, go deep on that topic, but then also bring it back to like, okay, what matters when I'm actually just sitting in this person's living room trying to make a decision about what to do with them. Um, because we can definitely lose the forest for the trees sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to keep things practical. And then something that's really important to Ross and I is the softer skills of EMS because you can ace the NRAMT and do freaking awesome in paramedic school. But if you can't like talk to somebody, you never even get a chance to apply any of that knowledge. So we're passionate about helping people with those softer skills. And that's something that we're working on now. But yeah, you can check us out Instagram at Loud and Clear and yeah, I don't know what else to say. You know, EMS is sometimes when you're in your sweet spot, it's like seriously the most fun you can have. Like that you have these moments where you're just like, I cannot believe they let us do this. And then they're balanced out by these times where you just experience like the darkest parts that our society has in them. And yeah, I think if you're curious about this field or you're new to it, it's incredibly rewarding, but also you need to develop self-care, like I already mentioned, but also just self-awareness, you know? Like I think if you reach a point where it's not that for you anymore, then don't become a terrible human being. Life is so much bigger. Like do something new or pivot or find a new way to apply your skills and knowledge. But yeah, I don't know. What do you I don't know, what do your listeners appreciate hearing? I guess I'm in this weird place and maybe you can relate where like I still feel like I've only been doing this job for like a year or two. Like I still feel like I learn a ton all the time. And then you kind of look back and you're like, well, I guess I've been doing it 15 years. I guess like there's probably some stuff that I keep inside my brain that might be important to share.
Yeah, 100% I agree with that because I had somebody tell me, I had an interview the other day and I had somebody tell me that they really appreciated how humble I am despite having 20 years of experience and knowledge under my belt. And I was like, yeah, I guess I could I could potentially share all of that, you know what I mean? But that's why we're doing the podcast, right? Is to share that knowledge. And I think that we are being selfless people by hosting these awesome podcasts and sharing these stories with all of these people that take the time to listen. And I really appreciate a lot of the self-care advice that you gave that is huge, huge, huge among us. Um, being able to provide a platform for people to go and share those stories also is huge. So I really appreciate that you shared that. And that is one of the reasons the whole podcast started was to get people out to expose the stories and to share the stories so that people know that they're not alone. We're never alone in this industry, and it does feel like that a lot of the time. And I think it's easy for us to judge another EMT or a nurse or a paramedic or a doctor to say like, oh, I can't believe they couldn't handle that part of the job or they couldn't handle whatever. But our experiences are our own, and how we deal with them is up to us, right? Like, it's easy for me to say, oh, I just saw this really shitty thing. I just saw this horrible, horrible thing. And that is up to me to help myself get through that, right? I think there's a lot of uh, EMS and medicine in general. We just think we can go to the doctor and get these issues fixed, and that's not how it works. There's got to be some dedication to that, right? Some self-preservation and self-dedication to get to those points. And only you know how you can get to that point. And it might be trial and error, whether it's going to therapy or going to the gym or reading a book in the bathtub or going fishing, like whatever you need to do, you just need to find that, and you have to be willing to give yourself the time to do that.
Yeah, I love that. You're totally right. And to add one step to that is like, you know, when you experience these things that give you post-traumatic stress or that stress response, working through them make you're stronger on the back end of that, you know?
Yes,
You're not broken. You're
you're
not a
not
broken toy
broken.
forever. If you do nothing about it, you can descend into being a broken toy forever. But don't do that. Don't be that person. Work on yourself, become better, and bounce back to be stronger and more resilient than you were before. That's not easy. It takes, you know, you got to get up every day and you got to make it, you have to make hard choices to pursue that and to do that on your own. But people aren't going to do it for you, like you said, and you need to fight for yourself.
Yes, and if that means leaving the industry, whether you've been in for a year or 20 years, I mean, that's something that you have to come to terms with, right? Like, we're here to do this, but if we can't, this is just destroying us, don't be afraid to get out either.
Right. Right.
Awesome. Well, Will, thank you so much, dude. Really great conversation. I've appreciated having you on here, and I hope you have a great, wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for joining us on the 911 Nonsense podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
Thanks. Bye. Thanks for tuning in. If you're enjoying the show and want to show your support, be sure to check out the new merch store on Bonfire. Find the link in the description below. Also, if you have any guest suggestions or if you're interested in being a guest on Noon yourself, visit the website at www.samspursuit.com to get in touch.